You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar. Indeed, if you are on the YouTube channel, you get to view us. We got to work on your camera. I don't think it's as good as mine.
My camera's not as good as yours. I'm not. Which is a shame, because we all know that the way this works is you're the charismatic one that attracts people. I'm the actual attractive one. So
is that how it works?
Oh, it's always how it's worked.
Is that the deal?
That way for decades.
Yeah. All right, yeah, I'll take that. That's fine. I'm the charismatic one. My name's Chris. He's Ed. This is Sox in the Basement. The people that are just listening as they normally have for 600-700 episodes of Sox in the Basement. Nothing has changed for you, but we're going to hopefully have this up on video on YouTube, and if not, then the next episode will be up. It's been a crazy last couple of weeks, so I'm experimenting here as we go along. My hope is there's a video of this. If there's not, something went wrong. Like something's going wrong right now for the White Sox in terms of their evaluation.
What isn't going wrong? What's not going wrong for the White Sox right now?
Their evaluation of Miguel Vargas frustrates the hell out of me. Yeah. It just bothers me. And the reason it bothers me is we have the Los Angeles Dodgers, an organization that wins championships, an organization that spends money, an organization that's got a great system from their international scouting to the way that they develop players to the way that they draft players. And they're also really good at knowing when a guy isn't what they hoped he would be, but they find another position for him on the field, or they trade him away before he loses value. They're a very smart, very successful organization, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They actually share a spring training facility with the Chicago White Sox. So the White Sox staff, everybody from the general manager on down, everybody from Jerry Reinsdorf on down, gets to watch what the Dodgers do firsthand and visit with them for a month and a half every year in the spring. If any organization could learn anything from a successful organization, you would think the White Sox would learn something from the Dodgers. Now we have the Dodgers with a prized possession in their minor leagues in Miguel Vargas, a guy who tears it up in the minor leagues, a guy with all this pedigree. And the Dodgers, in their valuation of Miguel Vargas, decide he ain't a third baseman. They decided that. In fact, they were so sure of it that when they gave him regular time finally, and they gave him a full half season of everyday starts, they put him at second base. Now, the metrics also back this up. He's a subpar third baseman. But the Dodgers, being a smart organization, they said, we think we can at least stick him over at second. And then they gave him a whole half of a season. I think he played exactly 81 games over there. And he sucked. He was a terrible hitter. They could not get him to adjust to the major leagues. So they gave up on him. And then they used him basically as a platoon guy that they moved around from time to time, a guy off the bench. They made sure that they didn't completely destroy the luster on him, so a team like the White Sox would come along and give them valuable pieces that help them win a championship. And then the White Sox take Miguel Vargas, a guy who the Dodgers evaluated as a poor third baseman and unable to hit in the major leagues, and this week basically came out and said he's the everyday third baseman on our team. Because we traded for him, and we don't want to admit that we're wrong about anything ever. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Chris Getz, you're letting me down on this one. I don't understand why he's automatically, and this is according to reports coming out of spring training. I think James Fegan was the first one on this, but I'm seeing it's being repeated across all the different outlets over the last couple of days, that Will Venable is saying, oh, that's our everyday third baseman. And if you look at the lineups, he's batting up towards the top of the order, not because he's going to be there, hopefully. Maybe they're going to do that too. Maybe they're that crazy. They're going to take a guy who the Dodgers evaluated as not a very good hitter, and they're going to put him up at the top of the order. But I think it's just because they're trying to get him every day at bats so they can get him going, and they're trying to get him as many at bats as possible. But this team is indicating there is no competition over at third base. It's Miguel Vargas. I wish I could say I was surprised. This is so White Sox of them, isn't it? You come off of the worst season in history, and you go, we're going to take a guy that an intelligent organization said wasn't a right fit at third base, wasn't good there. Metrics say he's subpar defensively. We're going to put him in that position anyway, and we're going to make him the everyday guy there, even though that organization said, we gave him a shot, he can't do it. And we saw what he could do when he got here. He showed us he couldn't do it when he got here either.
It's almost like he's the new Yoan Moncada, right? He's this guy that has the pedigree. He's this guy that they have expectations for. He's not as good a third baseman as Yoan Moncada ever was, of course, but you're right. I mean, the Dodgers gave him every opportunity. The White Sox gave him a lot of opportunity last year, and to name him the primary third baseman is a little unfortunate at this point. I mean, I would understand if the idea was he's the primary third baseman. He's the primary third baseman, in that he's the one that has to be knocked off if anybody else is going to take the job from him. So if Brian Ramos is going to come back and take the job from him, if Lindeen Sosa is going to come back and take the job from him, but to sit there and just kind of anoint him this early in camp, it just doesn't make any sense. And they should really know who this guy is. There should be no mystery surrounding Dodgers, because they share so much of spring training with each other and have for years. And Miguel Vargas has been a part of the Dodgers organization for quite a while. I mean, this is not a guy that was like drafted last year. But it gets to a point where you do wonder, like, if you're going to scout a team, you should know the Dodgers very well. So why is it that this, to us as fans, we look at this and go, it's so bloody obvious that this guy is not somebody that you anoint. Yes, you want to give him as many at-bats as possible. You want to lead him off during the spring, or have him bat second so he gets as many opportunities as he can to see what he's got, so you're evaluating him. I'm fine with that. But for the love, to anoint him, I mean, yeah, it boggles the mind.
Insane. It's insane.
It's to the point where the Dodgers and White Sox do mix so much that someone just sent me a text asking if a video of Kyle Teel hitting a batting practice dinger off of Roki Sasaki is going to be our highlight of the year as White Sox fans.
Here's the thing. We're looking at a guy that in 2023, and granted he's only 23 years old, but he had done everything he could in the minor leagues, hits 195 over 81 games and 303 plate appearances with a 672 OPS. And then he gets some time where they're moving him around over 30 games. He only gets 80 plate appearances. So he's coming in off the bench. He's pinch hitting. If you have 30 games and only 80 plate appearances, you're not playing a lot of games where you're starting. And he's able to get together 239 with a 735 OPS for the Dodgers. They nurse him to the level just good enough statistically to trick a team into taking him. And then the White Sox take him, give him 42 games and 157 plate appearances, and he hits 104 with a 387 OPS. I didn't even know they got that low. That's incredible. And now he is the everyday third baseman for your 2025 Chicago White Sox because of where he was drafted and what he had done in the minor leagues. I know there are a lot of scout heads, a lot of prospect heads that will sit there and tell me constantly, I've had it said on my show, oh, Chris, you're being too hard on Miguel Vargas. Oh, look at his pedigree. Look at what he could be. Look at it. Look at it. I am looking at it. I don't think a guy like this should get the automatic. I don't care if you're in a season that doesn't matter. I just don't understand the idea of he's your everyday third baseman. It just seems like you're trying to put a round peg into a square hole after another team showed you that's not where that peg goes.
Well, and the only hope, if there's a glimmer of hope here, the only hope is that for Miguel Vargas, that it's between his ears. Right? That physically he is capable. It's not like he's got a bat speed problem where he can't get around on major league pitching, or, that it's not something mechanical with him. It's hopefully just that he couldn't adjust to the idea that he needed to be someone who contributes to a Dodgers organization that is in a win now mode, or that he needs to come in and prove and earn a job that the White Sox are giving him this opportunity, and he's putting pressure on himself. We've talked about athletes doing this before and pressing and really pressing hard. If that's the case, and Will Venable is sitting there going, okay, I'm a whisperer of guys like that, and I know that if I say, look, you're our third baseman, go out there, get some hits, do your thing. Don't worry about it. We'll work on the defense. We'll work on the at-bats. Just go out and have fun. Don't worry. You got a job. You got this. Maybe he turns it around. I mean, that's the only hope. That's the glimmer of hope. And I'm grasping
the real
at
hope
straws.
is that I look like an idiot. The real hope is that, like, at some point we're replaying this after Miguel Vargas has hit like 35 home runs and is an all-star. Okay, that's the hope.
Well, the hope is always that you and I look like idiots who would prognosticate bad things.
Yeah,
but
I'm not putting money down on it. You shouldn't either. That I'm going to be an idiot on this.
I'm not putting any money on you looking like a moron. And as much as I'd like to, I'm not going to.
Sox in the Basement listeners, switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living and make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Hyatt has stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling, and they're going to work with your insurance. They have 0% financing available for qualified individuals. If you use a CPAP machine and you wake everybody in the house up, at least that's what my dad's was like when I was younger. If you're unhappy with your vendor, switch now, get supplies directly mailed to you. You can test it out in their showroom. They have testing rooms for all the different CPAP machine options. They also have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors. Hyatt Home Medical Equipment, learn all about them at hhme.com. And what the Vargas news tells me as well is that Rojas is going to be the second baseman. There's a reason why Mydroth is getting a lot of time at short, even though scouts say he should be a second baseman. They're going to fit him in the short. This is also really interesting to me. When the Red Sox, another really good organization with a history of winning, their scouts said that Chase Mydroth gets on base well. Like, there's a lot of really good things about this kid, but one of the things, if you read scouting reports on him, is that he's probably better suited for second base. The Red Sox, though, played him at short primarily. The White Sox acquired him in a trade. And rather than say he's a second baseman, I'm seeing him more at short early on, as if he's the guy who will go in there if Montgomery isn't ready, or maybe their intention is to move him around. But again, there's another fear. A guy who is likely not suited for that position, where organizations are already saying he may not end up at short, even though that's where he was originally drafted to be at. He may be a second baseman. The Sox sitting there looking at him saying, oh, no, shortstop, because, we're just locked in our ways. That's something I'm going to be watching. And if Rojas is over at second and Mydroth is a guy who's getting some work at second, mostly work over at short, and Montgomery, he already had a home run, and they're already trying to tell you he's probably going to be the starting shortstop. Oh, Lenin Sosa, where are you going to fit in? Right? He had a great time at the plate at the end of the season. I don't think there's any room for him. And he's probably the only name. And then think of all the other names after those guys. They don't even have a chance. You tell me Miguel Vargas is automatically a third. Yeah. And you went out and picked up Rojas. And you have Andrew Vaughn over at first. And you have Montgomery, who they want to put in there, and Mydroth, who they acquired. I don't know why the rest of you guys showed up for Sox Fest Live and pretended you were going to be on the team this year. You ain't making it. They bamboozled you into showing up inside of the auditorium when you're going to be in the minor leagues.
Yeah. If your name is Brooks Baldwin, you might as well find an apartment in Charlotte because you're not coming north. I mean, Mydroth, the interesting thing about Mydroth at shortstop is what you said about Colson Montgomery and whether or not they think he's actually ready. I mean, I know he hit a home run, but let's see.
Put him in there. 162 games. That's how the White Sox think. 162 games. Just throw him in there. He had a great time in the Arizona Fall League, and he had a couple good weeks at the end of a terrible season in the minors. Just lock him in the short. We need something to put on the program.
Well, and let's face it. I mean, all being jaded aside, in a competition between Chase Mydroth and Colson Montgomery, I want Colson Montgomery to win. I want him to take the shortstop spot. I want him to have a good spring and have it translate into the regular season because we've been waiting on this guy. And you want that from your top prospects. Chase Mydroth is among them, but he's not the guy, right? And there is something to be said early on about in spring training, sitting there saying, okay, they say he's not a shortstop. How bad could he really be? Let's find out, right? Let's look and see, is the arm really that poor? Is the footwork bad? Is his release too long? What is it? And see if maybe he's somebody that you do bring north as a guy that is, one, a fallback option in case any of the above falter, okay? Because even Josh Rojas is capable of not performing. I mean, he's not an automatic lock that he's going to come in and perform at a replacement or above a replacement level.
Yeah, but he's more sure than most of these guys because of his track record.
100%,
right?
Because he's actually a Major League Baseball player. He's the veteran
they have to knock out a position. If he gets knocked out of position, that's great. That means somebody who's young, who you want to be on this team for a long time, did something finally on this team. That'd be great. But he's probably locked in. And by the way, as you're talking about this, I'm looking at the lineup for today. And they, after all these indications, Lenyn Sosa standing at second and Rojas is over at third. So they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing.
Well, they do value positional flexibility, don't
Maybe that's what this is. Maybe that's what this kind of day is.
It's what it is there.
It's just being done to throw off the podcasters who are gonna comment on Miguel Vargas.
Yeah, we spent all this time talking about how Miguel Vargas is the starting third baseman. Now watch us be totally wrong, and he's playing left field while Andrew Benintendi's DHing and Josh Rojas is playing third, Chase Maedroth is at second. And Brooks Baldwin, you should still go and get that apartment in Charlotte. I'm just saying, buddy.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't see him in any lineups. Definitely. I don't even think he's played yet in the spring. So I have not heard a word about him in any way, shape, or form. And he was a guy that for a moment there was like, hey, this guy could be something for us. Brian Ramos. I mean, I haven't heard.
Well, I think Ramos is hurt. I think Ramos is, I don't think he's throwing yet, so I don't know. I think they're just waiting for him to come back.
It's why I love you. I love you. You find the mistake right there and you correct it right away, so I don't sound like an idiot for the next 3 days before I have to correct it. Look, it's early on. I think you're going to see a lot of variations in the lineup. Don't take very much from that. But when you hear what they're saying, when you hear the idea that Vargas has got third base and that he's the guy, and you know Vaughn's already there, and you know what the plans are and the hopes are for Montgomery, and you bring in a guy like Rojas who's got to be displaced, and you heard Chris Getz talk about Maedroth so much, it's really easy to start to kind of figure out who's going to be on this team. You know? I mean, Lenyn Sosa's got to show up and have a monster spring, I would say at this point, to prove that the last month or so was real, because otherwise they're done with him, which is probably going to happen. You know, and if it happens, it happens. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. He's just one of those guys that I thought, wow, there was a spark there at the end when nobody else seemed to have a spark. But they, as an organization, you can already see how they're forming in their brains what this infield is going to look like. And, you know, for a team that didn't win anything last year and has so many options, it's just odd to me that we're not even to March yet. And you're using pen almost on most of the positions already on this team. And that seems kind of silly to me. I don't get that.
Yeah, and I don't know. You know, you wonder if there's some internal scouting that you and I are not seeing or not privy to that would suggest that they really don't like something about Lenyn Sosa's game, and they really don't have any faith in him long term, or there's something that they just don't like.
Well, he's bad defensively.
I mean, there's that, you know, but Vargas isn't all that great defensively either, right? And they're giving him every opportunity. I mean, it is just odd. I feel like this early in spring training, I almost don't want to give even too much credit to what they're saying and the chatter, because the players ultimately, on this particular squad, the players are going to have to figure out how to do it for themselves, and they're going to have to prove it or disprove it. Like you said, they're not going to be able to ignore Lenyn Sosa if he is absolutely raking the entire way through spring. And if Colson Montgomery, if that home run is it, you know, or if Miguel Vargas is still hitting 100 at the end of spring training, you know, I can't believe that they're going to look at that and say, well, Sosa was doing this, you know, and he's hitting almost 400 and Vargas is hitting 102, and we're still going to take Miguel Vargas north. But then again, it is the White Sox, and they did just set a record for futility. And they haven't given us any reason to think that they have completely turned the page on all of this. So
let's talk instead about the thing that's got me all excited. And it's that billionaire owners of sports teams are dropping like flies, right? Like, I'm sorry.
It's true. They are kind of going.
My condolences to the McCaskey family, but we've lost Virginia. Larry Dolan, I think, just died. What
Larry
was he,
Dolan, yes.
94, 95 years old out there in Cleveland. Jerry Reinsdorf, not far behind in age. From that guy.
No, he's not. He's
not far behind in age. And, you know, he smokes cigars and he's a little overweight. I mean, like I was talking to my dad the other day, And he was like, he could last for a long time. Your grandfather, he had kind of the same build as him. And he used to drink Budweiser all the time. It wasn't like he was going to the gym. I'm like, Dad, he didn't make it more than a couple years than where Jerry is right now. Like, he's not getting to 100. Like, Jerry's not getting that Virginia McCaskey thing. And so it's interesting to me that you see a guy, a billionaire, and this is a real billionaire with a real big giant B in front of it. Okay.
Legit. This is a real live legitimate billionaire, Justin Ishbia.
Yeah. And
his brother Matt.
He gives up full ownership of a Major League Baseball team. Think about how hard that is these days. Like,
he was the Twins. He was gonna own the Twins. He and his brother were gonna own the Twins outright.
Right. He was gonna be little big league. He gets the whole thing, right? He wasn't just gonna be like a majority owner. He was gonna get the whole thing, from what I understand. That's very rare to get. And that is a massive investment opportunity for a guy. And that's an organization where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's in Minnesota. It doesn't matter if he's in Kansas City. You bring in a guy that's got money and he's going to win a lot. And this guy is going to spend and he's going to make money. So it doesn't matter. Now, the only thing that would make a guy like that turn that down to buy up more minority shares of a team like the White Sox is, one, he's much younger than Jerry Reinsdorf, so he knows he's going to outlive him. And two, he's got to believe he's going to eventually own the team. Everybody's got speculation like, oh, I wonder if there's a backroom deal here, or I wonder if he's going to help out with like a new property or a new stadium, or I wonder what him and Jerry are working out with each other. Deep down in the end, you don't become a billionaire if you aren't sure about a few things. He doesn't make this move if he isn't sure that no matter what Jerry Reinsdorf does, Jerry wakes up one day and says, whatever handshake deal I got with this guy, I'm going to double cross him. He knows he's going to get this team. He doesn't do this unless he's sure that he knows he can get it. Like, my theory on this whole thing, and again, everybody's got theories, but my theory on this whole thing is based upon what the White Sox issued after he started grabbing up these shares, is that Jerry, I don't think, has 51%. I don't think he has 51%.
No, we've talked about this before, and I don't know that Jerry ever had 51%. You don't need to have 51% in a partnership like what the White Sox are owned by in order to be the managing partner.
Right, but here's the thing. He probably has an agreement.
More shares than everybody else.
He probably has an agreement in place in which, while he's still around, he has majority control. But you have to wonder what happens. You have to wonder what happens if he dies and his shares pass on, but I wonder if his control would pass on.
No, usually not. Okay, so
before you explain this, because my reasoning behind this is, okay, yes, everything the White Sox issued would be true about it doesn't matter how many shares this guy grabs up, Jerry's still going to be the boss. All of that would be true. And it could still be true that if Jerry dies and somebody has the majority of the shares, they would be able to make themselves the new CEO. They would make themselves the new main guy. They would have control because they have the most amount of shares when they have to determine who runs the team. Let's say that the Reinsdorf show up and they got like 23% of the shares, 19% of the shares. And this guy's got 40. He's got more votes. He just takes over, right? So, I mean, there's got to be a guy doesn't give up the deal in Minnesota if he doesn't think there's a way to gain control of the team upon the death of Jerry Reinsdorf, no matter what the Reinsdorfs want to do, because you don't gamble when you're a billionaire.
No. So the way these things work is it's not backroom deals. It's really, really very much front room deals. Okay. And Jerry might be the boss and he might be the guy that's in charge. He's the chairman. Okay. And that could continue. And in fact, Ishbia might sit there and say, that's fine. I'm going to let Jerry, ride this thing out until he's ready to be done. But you hit it on the head. Jerry's shares, however many there are, okay, when they go to his estate, however they're passed on, if they're not passed on to just one heir, okay, if they're passed on to multiple heirs, it doesn't really matter because however they're going to vote, they're going to vote. But if all the other minority shareholders are selling, okay, and they're giving their shares to Ishbia, and they're not diluting the share count by doing this, okay? He's not buying new shares. He's buying existing people out. And there are people who probably want to get out, I'm sure. I'm sure they're looking at this going, I don't want the uncertainty of what happens when Jerry goes. I don't want the uncertainty of what happens with this team now being not very good.
Some of these owners are older than Jerry.
Right. And that's just it. And they're trying to get out and they're trying to pass these things on. What he's probably doing, there's two ways he could go about this. One, it's a corporation. The White Sox are set up as a corporate entity. So if he's buying these shares up, he could be trying to do something along the lines of a takeover. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee that Jerry stays the boss. Right now, yes, he is. And that's not going to immediately change. Jerry's not being bought out. He's not selling his shares from what we understand. But we don't know what's going to happen in the coming years and how many shares that Ishbia is going to buy and how they're going to manage that. Two, like you said at the outset, Jerry's getting up there in age. Whether he decides to retire or whether he holds on to it until he dies, however he does it, there could be some dealings within the corporation that says that the succession plan was always going to be that Jerry's shares would pass to his estate or pass on however he's planned out, his estate. And then those shares would be either sold back to the White Sox. That happens frequently in corporations. Somebody passes, their family gets the money, the value of the shares, but the shares go back to the team, back to the entity.
Well, he always talked about how his son should sell the White Sox. So maybe they get a choice.
His sons can choose to sell. Either way, if I'm Justin Ishbia and I'm Matt Ishbia and I already know how to run sports teams, professional sports teams, because remember, they own a couple of teams out in Phoenix.
Oh, God, they would spend money. We'd be in a major market with somebody who would spend money. We'd start winning.
And why would you give up Minnesota for Chicago?
Because it's a big market, because you have a bigger potential to make money.
You have way more, you have way more opportunity in Chicago than you do in Minneapolis.
Look, the billionaire saw opportunity, a long-term making far more money. He's got a home, I want to say, out in the suburbs. He actually has a place of residence. I thought I read.
Yeah.
He's like, the White Sox are worth more if I think I can get my hands on the White Sox. He gets close to buying the Twins. You also have to wonder if Jerry then comes to him and says, hey, man, if you do this, I'll give you this. You get this at the end, but I just want to have control. You don't know what conversation was happening there. I mean, it's weird. The timing is weird because he's been a minority owner up until this point, but all of a sudden he changes course right at the last moment before he gets a team. Like, the way I read this was he was going to be the owner by opening day of the Minnesota Twins if he would have just hung in there and kept doing what he was doing. So this is a really late in the process change. There has to be a reason why he does it. And whatever the deal is with Jerry Reinsdorf, trust me, if Jerry woke up tomorrow to try and double cross him, there's already enough assurances, enough legal wrangling. This guy has a path to taking over this team one way or another. I don't think billionaires gamble. That's not how they become billionaires. No. So I would think that he is, no matter what anybody says, until it's proven otherwise, that's the next owner of the Chicago White Sox, I believe. And I really want it to be, because I'm going to tell you this right now. He isn't moving the team because, like I said, he's got roots right here in the Midwest. He's not moving the team. He's got money, and he's going to want to win. And he's going to be in a weak division, and he's going to start spending. And that's what he's going to do. And you're going to see a very different franchise. And so now we're literally on Jerry Reinsdorf death watch. I'm sorry, but we are. Because everything changes
more so
when he
than
dies.
We have been.
Everything changes. Like the uncertainty of, maybe he'll move the team to Nashville. Forget that. You're never going to hear about it again. Maybe he'll sell the team to somebody who'll move it out of the city. Forget that. It's never happening. I don't believe that that's happening either now because of this. All the threats are gone. If this guy's buying up shares. All the threats are gone. So now it's literally sit around and wait and see when the old guy dies. And when he dies, somebody else steps in, and we already kind of know who that name is going to be. That's my belief based upon everything that I've read this week. That's how this would end up going. I mean, I can always be wrong, but that's how it feels. I mean, that's the gut reaction, reading all the articles on it, kind of looking at all the different speculation and understanding that a billionaire doesn't just start buying up shares of something on a gamble and give up control of a Major League Baseball team that was in his hand. He had something in his hand of great value, and he put it down to pick up more shares of the White Sox. There's a reason. Okay? So as a fan, and as anybody paying it, just use your logic on this right now. Okay? There's going to be tons of speculation here. There's going to be all kinds of, the statements put out by the White Sox, they're true at face value, but they're so simplistic, leaving out detail. It's for a reason, because they're technically true, but it doesn't mean that this isn't the path to new ownership, because I just don't see how you give up the Twins when they were in your hand if you don't think that you're getting the White Sox eventually. And again, they're dropping like flies, these owners. All right? You don't get to live forever. You cannot get away from the Reaper forever, Ed. At some point, we're all going, and you can't take the money with you.
No, and if you're talking about the Reaper, I mean, talk about repurposing the phrase "good guys wear black."
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.